Welcome in everybody to another episode of the Strength for Your Purpose podcast. So excited to be back here with you for another week. Have had a few solo weeks here and there recently, but am super excited to be bringing you another fantastic interview from another fantastic guest that I've had the pleasure of meeting recently. And you'll hear in just a second that met her through someone that many of you who have been longtime listeners of the podcast should be familiar with. So without further ado here, I'll start introducing our guest this week. I'm joined by Jessica Walley, who's an inspiring yoga instructor with over 12 years of dedicated personal practice and who's currently enrolled in YogaRenew's 200-hour YTT course. On top of that, she has worked as an emergency dispatcher and is working with a local police department now, teaching yoga to the first responders. And here's where you're going to recognize this, everybody. Is currently working at Strength of Purpose over in Buxton. Our good friend Josh Jewett was the one that sort of bridged the gap here between Jessica and myself. Jessica has a passion for helping people feel their best through the mind, body, and soul connection. And I'm really excited for her to talk about her journey because we were chatting a little bit before the podcast starts. So without further ado here, Jessica, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited.
Yes, very, very excited to finally get to meet and talk with you a little bit more. So we were talking a little bit at the start of the podcast with your role in the different police departments you've worked in, your roles in emergency services and with first responders. So talk to us maybe a little bit about that in your yoga practice and maybe how the two have, did you need yoga because of the work you did as an emergency dispatcher? How did that all go?
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what happened. I was working as a dispatcher in Portsmouth a long time ago, probably 12 years ago. And they had a yoga teacher come and teach them yoga. And I thought that was really interesting. And I'm like, because it's very high stress job for the dispatchers and for the officers and every first responder. It's just really high stress. So anything that could help with mental resilience or anything that could help with physical, mental health is amazing. So that was awesome that they had a yoga teacher come there. I didn't know anything about yoga back then, but I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter, and I needed something to lower my stress because I didn't want any of that stress to get, to her in any type of way.
Sure.
So I discovered that yoga. I went to yoga classes. I just dove right in and I fell in love with it. And it helped so much with everything that I was going through, just as working those long hours and high stress situations.
Yeah.
It was a blessing. So I just want to share that with everybody else. So I think it's amazing that it just works out now that I'm teaching at a police department and now I'm teaching within the community and just being able to share this gift with everybody.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine some of the things you've been on the other end of the line for. And I think regardless of how, some people might listen to this and go, well, geez, maybe my job isn't as stressful as what Jessica is here. But exactly. Yeah. We have stress everywhere and everyone handles it differently. But the one thing that I've found both in what I do for work and in talking with people like yourself who work in different areas of help that focus on stress management is that it all boils down to one thing, that getting kind of connected to not just the stressful feelings we're having, but our body as well goes a really long way to managing that stress, no matter what level of it you actually are feeling.
Yeah. And I think it's amazing that workplaces are now involving yoga, no matter where you work. There's corporate offices involving it. And it's amazing. It's a great thing for the wellness committee or whoever is handling that to do for their employers.
Definitely. Did you have a hard time convincing anyone that these officers and administrative staff and dispatchers should be doing this? Was there any resistance at first, or was everyone kind of pretty much on board and kind of went along with it?
A lot of people were on board, but there was a little bit resistance from some people. And just the more that I kept showing consistency and just kept once a week, I would set time to teach yoga, at least for just maybe a half an hour, people would start to warm up, or I would just say, just it one time and just see how you like it. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it again. But most of the time they loved it. And yoga is not just about the movements. It's not just about being flexible. Like that's a common myth that I hear all the time. It's really, as long as you're just sitting there and breathing and focusing, being mindful, that's yoga. It's meditation, the breath and body movement. That's what it is. So
right. And to me, it seems that some of that stuff has to start somewhere, right? Like the full practice of yoga is certainly the connection, as you said, you like to show people the mind body connection to the soul. So, but for some people, it can be hard to try to find both of those at the same time, right? So how do you, when if someone is a little hesitant for one reason or another, what are some things you like to maybe tell them about or show them if they're not sure like yoga is for them, that might help change their mind a little bit? Because there might be people listening here who have thought about it, but maybe just what you said, like, I'm not flexible enough for that. I can't just go jump in a yoga class and bend like a pretzel. What are some things you like to tell people to get them feeling a little more comfortable?
Just try to do it at home by yourself. Maybe look up a YouTube video, a free YouTube video. There's a lot of them. There's Yoga with Adrienne, Yoga with Cassandra. There's all these free yoga videos that you could do. Just try it at home, and you don't have to do all of the poses that they're telling you to do. They're just a guide, but you could just sit there in child's pose, which is very relaxing. It's a very grounding pose. You could sit there the whole time and just focus on your breath, and you're doing the work.
Yeah.
You're doing yoga.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't focus enough on those little things like, I don't know, breathing, which is very important for us to do and to focus on it. And even now, this is something that kind of makes sense to me, but I definitely want to hear your take on this. The fact that what you just described is in fact yoga, like you said, just sitting, working on your breath, feeling a little grounded, that in and of itself is yoga. And is that really because in that moment, that's just the thing we're focusing on? We're not worried about all the other things that could be, running through our brain at that moment. Like what about it is, what about that makes it the foundation of a practice like yoga?
If you're just focusing on your breath, if you just sit there and count your breath, it's really hard to focus on anything else except for yourself, your body, and your breath. And then you can start to, whenever your mind wanders, just recognize that thought and then let it go and focus on your breath. It's a practice. And the more that you practice, the better you're going to get at it.
Yeah. And that's something that we can apply anytime in our day, right? We don't have to be sitting down to do, as you suggested, maybe starting out with a video at home or sitting in on one of your classes. That's something that can kind of ground and center us at any stressful point of our day.
Yeah, you could do it at any time. That's why I'm teaching my officers that I work with yoga, because I'm trying to teach them that they can focus on their breath at any time during a stressful situation. Maybe after a call, you just sit in your cruiser and take a few breaths. That's focus. That's mindfulness. That's focusing on you and focusing on the earth that's supporting you. And just, it's just, that's what I'm trying to teach them to bring into their life, because it's easy to forget that, not just them, but anybody. It's easy to forget to focus on you, take care of yourself first, and everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, very, very much. We definitely have to. Yeah, we definitely have to, how are we supposed to be the best person that we can be for other people if we can't even do that for ourselves? Yeah, no, that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's why for me, it's very beneficial for just my life. Just even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes of just sitting there and breathing and moving your body and linking your breath with your movements, it puts you in such a better mood for the rest of the day. If you can't find time in the morning, just find 10 minutes during the day and it will make you feel so much better.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about what you found, maybe specifically what you found yoga did for you when you started practicing yoga while you were pregnant with your daughter, and what are you noticing with some of your current coworkers and some of the officers that you do this work with? What types of changes are you seeing there?
For me, it definitely made me more of a patient person, and it made me more confident, more resilient. The more I practiced yoga, the more resilient it made me. And I am seeing that with the officers too. It's making them more resilient. It's making them just a little bit, it helps everybody. It makes you just feel better about yourself, and you can really bring that into the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I found with yoga, is it just made me a much better person all around.
Yeah.
The more that I practice. And then when I don't, it's like when I kind of just take a week off or something, I can notice myself getting more anxious and just not as aware.
Yeah. It
Mm-hmm.
and it's one thing to maybe notice some of that. And it can be important to notice that about ourselves, right? When we're getting
Mm-hmm.
maybe our reactions to certain events or emotions or whatever the case might be, but to have maybe other people notice it, like you said, noticing even just like the demeanor around the office changing just from working through this practice. And you said you do it what, like
Mm-hmm.
once a week with your coworkers and with the officers in the force?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once a week, not just officers, it's anybody that works
Anybody.
there,
Yeah.
administrative staff. And I notice that everybody is just in a little bit of a better mood than they were before
Yeah.
after they do maybe a half an hour of my class or anything. But I love being able to share that at the office. And I also have been teaching, like you said, at Josh's, the strength of purpose at the gym. I'm so grateful for that, being able to share it with everybody in the community, because everybody has stress and everybody has something that they need to let go of. And that is the perfect opportunity to let go of things that are going on.
Yeah.
It's linked with music. I have music going and I have aromatherapy, and it's just so therapeutic.
Wonderful.
So,
Yeah.
mhm.
No, that's fantastic. And I definitely want to get into a little bit more about uh, some of the stuff you're doing with Josh over there at Strength of Purpose,
Mhm.
because I think you have a really cool class combination that I'm very interested in hearing more about. I've told Josh this. I need to get over there myself. I know your Saturdays are
Yeah.
already really full, so I gotta go try to squeak in on a Tuesday here and try that class out myself. But um, before I get into that, I something kind of came to mind here as you were mentioning, even just starting out at home, because I actually have told a lot of my clientele that I work with that
Mhm.
yoga with Adrian. I've actually done that with my wife here at home multiple times,
Yeah.
and I love it because in the work that I do, I'm a very big like form and cue person. Giving people like all of the different modifications and options, and doing so in a way that people, even that are novices, can really understand. So
Mhm.
first, I'm sure that's something that you do and that you're learning. But if people are worried about that a little bit, can you talk to them a little bit about like what a good yoga practice instruction kind of might look like, so that they can sort of gauge what to expect from maybe their first class with one of those people you mentioned on YouTube, or coming to see you as well?
Yeah. So when you come to the yoga class, I like to it's always very welcoming, and I want to know what you want to focus on, how you're feeling. But when you come in, we start by just noticing our bodies and noticing how we feel in the room. We start by just closing our eyes or keeping a soft gaze,
Mm,
focusing on our breath. That's how we start, just very meditative.
mm,
And then you stay there maybe for about 5 minutes, and we just relax, become centered and present into the room.
mm,
And then we start to link our breath with our movement and do small movements. And once you warm up the muscles and warm up the body and everything and the breath, then you start doing a little bit more challenging. It depends on the type of yoga that you do, but just a little bit more challenging, so you can build a little bit resilience. in your mind and your body, physical, mental, all of that. And then we go back into like a meditative, relaxing state, like stretching, focusing again on our breath and our body. And then the end is Shavasana, which is usually 5 to 10 minutes of just laying down and relaxing, soaking in everything that you just did for yourself.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of modifications. Like if you don't, every day is different. So if you don't feel like doing the poses that the teacher is telling you to do, you don't have to do it. Yoga is non-judgmental, non-judgment on yourself and non-judgment on everybody else. You just go there. And if you're just sitting in that room, focusing on your breath and just not moving at all, that is as beneficial as if you were moving.
Yeah.
That's it. You just have to be there and just take time for yourself. But that's, with all the poses, there's all different types of modifications that you could do. If you're not comfortable doing one thing, the teacher should have other things that you can do instead. And it's okay to ask. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's all
yeah. No, that's one of my favorite parts about yoga practices in general, because I've done stuff that's in-person classes. I've done, as I mentioned, some stuff just on YouTube. And when you really get in that rhythm, but even within the rhythm of the movements of the practice, that instructor is able to fire things off at you that are like, well, maybe you can try this. And it always seems to come at the right time, Jess. It always seems that instruction and that pivot that you can make to make the movement better for you and still be able to keep in tune with your breath and not be focused on, oh my gosh, I must look like such a buffoon right now trying to get into this pose that I can't get into. It just always seems to hit at the right time and really does become more of a automatic thing. Like, put yourself in a position that your body would want to be in, to be comfortable and to still get something out of that movement and that breath work.
Yeah, just find what feels good. I think Adrian says that all the time. Find what feels good.
Yeah.
And that's all you do, is just find what feels good in your mind and your body in that moment. If you don't feel like doing something, don't do it. Because every day is different.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, every day is different.
Every day is different. Yes. I want to make sure we got that in, because it got out there on me for a second a little bit. But and I think talk to us a little bit about what that can do once people get more comfortable with, like you said, sometimes just coming in or whether you're doing it at home or doing it in a class and just getting used to breathing, finding your breath, focusing on your breath, feeling more grounded. That can do tons for us mentally, emotionally, and physically to a degree. But once people start meshing that breath work with more movement, getting into that yoga practice, what can that really do for us physically? That is going to be noticeable, not only necessarily in the moment, but is going to carry on outside of that session.
Yeah. If you focus your breath with your movement, if you lengthen your inhales and then make your exhales even longer than that, and with every exhale, just imagine yourself coming deeper into that pose. It's amazing how deep you can get into that pose. Like, you don't even realize how deep you can get into it until you just focus on that exhale and notice how it feels. And then the more that you do it, the easier it's going to get. And then you're just going to start breathing like that in normal life. Like, you're not even going to be doing yoga, and you're just going to like start to breathe and notice, like, every time you breathe, everything just feels better around you, or your body just feels better every time you breathe. Yoga helps with that, like reminding yourself how to breathe and noticing how it feels.
Yeah. And that becoming second nature is so awesome when you can see that that sort of change that you're looking for in people's daily life or their habits or their response to stress and stuff like that. Whether we're talking about that more emotional state, like breathing to center yourself mentally, emotionally, but even from a physical perspective, that can be very, very powerful for people when it starts to become more second nature in those stressful situations.
And you have to, it's easy. It's nice when somebody reminds you, like the yoga instructor, reminds you to lengthen your exhales and focus on deepening that stretch, or focus on deepening that twist. And then usually after the yoga class, people will say to me, I didn't think I could ever like go that far in a pose. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, it's your breath. Every time you inhale, you're supposed to lengthen and just elongate, and then with every exhale, just focus on deepening it. And it's amazing how far you can go. And the more that you do it, the further you can go. And then your body it just works. It gets better.
Yeah.
There's so many benefits. Could talk all day about that.
Right. Sure. And I think that speaks to some of the mindfulness of things too, the mindfulness of a yoga practice, because oftentimes, and again, I'm not teaching people yoga per se, but oftentimes when I'm teaching people a movement, usually them thinking like too much about either the movement or their response to the movement, or, you know, should it be a couple degrees this way and a little shimmy that way, or, you know, we get in our own heads about these things a little bit, but focusing on that breathing and exactly what in that flow that you just described actually makes the movement that much easier for people to accomplish, and that much more effective with what the goal of that movement is from a physical perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's all connected. That's very similar, like yoga and the work that you do, it's all connected.
Oh yes. Yeah. I tell everyone I can to go do yoga, just because I think I know I need to do it more, but I think it's great. That connection to the breath, the mindfulness of it, the, you know, doing movements that you're not used to doing under some really good instruction, but also being not overthinking them, and being able to be successful at them just does so much for our mental, emotional, and physical well-being.
Yeah. And you have control. You have control over yourself. If you don't feel like doing it, don't do it. Do something else that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Just breathe.
Right.
It's a practice. One day you might like doing the wheel pose. And one day you just might not. You might just want to just do bridge or support a bridge and support yourself with blocks or a pillow. Like that's okay. Everything is okay.
Right.
But it's only a practice. If the more you do it, the easier it gets. If you fall off and take like, you know, a week or a month off, I hear a lot of people like beating themselves up about that. And it's like, just get back into it. Just, it's okay.
Yeah. It's okay.
Judgment.
You're right. No judgment. And you showed up today. You might've been gone for a week or a month. But you showed up today. And I think what you just mentioned about, you know, it's okay if you don't want to do this pose and you want to do this instead today, giving ourselves that kind of grace just in life too, you know, like it's okay that you're not just grinding all the time. It's okay that you don't feel like you know, gave everything you gave the last time, the last time that you did whatever the task is, you know, as long as you did what you're capable of doing today and you did to the best of your ability that you have right now, that can go a long way, both in life and when you're in Jess's yoga class over at Strength Purpose. So speaking of that, Jess, I want to get into this cool little hybrid model that you and Josh have come up with, where a couple different days a week now you're doing a combination of, I believe it's a 30-minute yoga session. Or is it, do you do the strength first and then the yoga? I'll let you talk about it. How that you know what's going on. So you go ahead and talk about it. But it's this cool little hybrid between some strength training, some kettlebell work, and some yoga practice.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think of yoga and strength training as like peanut butter and jelly. Like they go so well together.
Yes.
So we do Tuesdays. It's Tuesdays at like 6, and then Saturdays at 8 in the morning. But we start with the strength training. So Josh will start us off with like small like movements, like warm up movements, like neck rolls or anything that warms our bodies up and stretches, just for like maybe 5 minutes. And then we do the kettlebell. So he does the circuits. He does, he just has all different types of moves that he teaches us. Every day is different. Some, you know, it's entertaining, and it's fun to do it with people who are in the room with you and the same energy. And it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Everybody's so awesome there.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's a great workout. I love it. And then after that, it's always with kettlebells, or we do like, core stuff too, which is amazing.
Yeah.
After that, we go into yoga. So I do more of a yin, like restorative yoga during those classes. And that's more of very relaxing, holding the poses longer. It's not as challenging yoga, that not physically challenging. It may be a little bit mentally, like to stay in the poses longer, but it's so beneficial. It stretches out the muscles, and it just cools your whole body down, calms your heart rate down. We go to music. It's just feels so good.
Yeah.
And then after that's 30 minutes of that. And then after, everybody's just like, all right, like it's amazing. We all just feel so much better.
Yeah.
It's the best idea that we ever had, doing the half kettlebell and then half yoga.
Yeah. No, I
so
love
great.
it. I mean, finding that balance. I was actually just talking to someone about this today, finding that balance between the different ends of the spectrum, right? Because a lot of people think yoga, like, stretching, like, yes, you're working your core, you're working some like stability, but you're not working a lot of people don't think you're working a lot of strength, right? There's certainly some movements you can do that are going to get things stronger for sure. And then you think kettlebells, like, oh, these big powerful movements and doing all, but you really got to have both to have a good balance throughout the body, just doing one thing, whether you're only doing yoga all the time or only doing strength stuff all the time. It doesn't, that's going to create some imbalance somewhere, right? If we're not working the muscles that need to be strong in one way and the muscles that need to be more stable in a different way. So that, I like how you phrase that, doing more of like a restorative to sort of match what just happened, but in a different way, from the 30 minutes of the kettlebell work before your yoga practice.
Yeah. Stretch, relax, breathe, just take it all in.
Yeah.
And then lay down for Shavasana, take even more of it in. And I noticed that yoga helps me more with my breathing when I'm strength training. So I have noticed that. So I definitely think that's a huge benefit too.
Yeah.
Combining yoga with strength training.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. That carry over into the other areas of fitness and of your life. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah. You can't forget to breathe, especially when you're strength training.
Yes.
You have to remember.
Right. Whether you're strength training or doing yoga, if you don't breathe, you will pass out. So please.
Yeah. Remember to breathe. I always remind all my clients to breathe, because you forget, and then you just notice yourself holding your breath. And I have to remember to breathe, and then they're like, oh yeah, I forgot. I do all the time, because I still go to yoga classes myself as a student. And I do too. If I'm in yoga class, I forget to breathe because I'm being challenged by a pose. And then the yoga teachers always remind you to breathe, which is nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's great. So Jess, I've got 2 more questions for you before we wrap up. But before I ask you those, let people know where they can learn more about you, how they can find you, how they can get in touch with you, to either inquire about some of the stuff you're doing with Josh, anything else you're doing on your own outside of the work at Strength of Purpose. How can people find you and learn more about you?
So I'm on Facebook, and I have a Facebook page called Let Yourself Bloom with Jess. And that's, I call it Let Yourself Bloom, because that's how I feel like yoga makes me feel. I feel like I'm blossoming into like a beautiful lotus flower that just like came out of the dirt, and, blossoming into something that feels nice. So Let Yourself Bloom on Facebook. And you can, if you wanted to take one of our classes, you can book on Strength of Purpose on his Facebook page. You could try those out. I think we're definitely going to be doing maybe an outdoor class soon.
Nice.
Either in Hollis or Buxton, somewhere around this area, we're going to do an outdoor class, which is so nice. with the sunshine and the wind. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
The sounds of nature.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm just doing that right now, and I'm going to be offering some more classes around the community, and just hoping to grow and help anybody just feel their best selves
Yeah.
in the area.
Fantastic.
Yeah, anything I can do. I'm always here. Any questions that anybody has, just message me on Facebook. If you can't find me there, I'm Jessica Mary on Facebook. You could find me there.
Wonderful.
But
And yeah, and we'll make sure
yeah,
we have all those links in the show notes so that people can find you and learn a little bit more about you and reach out if they have questions.
mhm.
Fantastic. So final two questions here, Jess. Number one, what is your definition of strength?
My definition of strength is not just physical, it's mental. Um, it's just being your best self for yourself and for others, and finding things that bring you joy.
Mm,
And if you're happy, then everybody else will be happy.
yeah.
Just where I, there's so many things I could define strength as, but
Yeah.
that's all I can think of right now.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And
Just keep going, keep trucking.
keep trucking. I like it. Yeah. And I like what you said earlier in the podcast, just making you more resilient. That's something that you found yoga helped you with, was making you more resilient. And that's definitely in much more than a physical sense, for sure.
Yes,
Um,
strength is a mental thing for me. It's not really physical, but the more strong you are mentally, the more strong you will be physically as well.
yeah, for sure. Love it.
Mhm.
And the final question I have for you, Jess, is what is your true purpose in life?
I know for sure lately I found my true purpose, and it's helping others through what I can share, like anything I can share. Mindfulness, yoga. I want to continue to learn more about it so I can teach more about it.
Mm,
But my true purpose has always been to just help others feel their best.
mm,
And it makes me feel good to help others and just make this world a better place.
yeah. Fantastic. Great. Well, thank you for leaning into that purpose. You're making the people that are listening to this, that show up to your classes, that are lucky enough to work with you at your
Thank
job.
you.
You're helping them and having that impact on them. So thank you for that. And thank you so much for joining me. This was a fantastic conversation. And there's so much more we can dive into. I'll have to have you back on, and we can
Yeah,
dive into the little more intricacies of yoga. This was a good introduction to you and the type of practice that you enjoy, but we can definitely dive into some more of that. So we'll definitely have you on again for sure.
yeah, now I know what to expect. It's my first podcast, so thank you for having me on here.
You're very welcome. You did fantastic. You did great.
Thank
So everybody go check Jessica out. The links to her Facebook pages and to Josh's Facebook page will be in the show notes so that you can sign up for the spots in their classes. And I hope to see some of you there. I actually my Wednesday evenings are starting to open up a little bit. So I might come see you for a full hour-long session here pretty soon here, Jessica.
Yes,
But I would encourage everyone to check that out to learn more about that. And thank you all for listening to the Strength for Your Purpose podcast. Really love all of and appreciate all the love and support. Please 5-star rate and review wherever you listen to these podcasts. If you found value in this episode, please be a friend and tell a friend, share it with someone you know, love, and respect, who will find value in this as well. And until next time, go crush it this week, and we will see you back here on the Strength for Your Purpose podcast.